I'm Tom Bowtell. I'm the artistic director of KIT Theatre, and we make adventures in learning. Now, an adventure in learning is an interactive story that erupts in a classroom and uses immersive theatre, digital tools, and game mechanics to motivate formal and informal learning, and also to inspire young people to explore their own creativity. I'm going to start by showing you a quick video about one of the pieces we made, and in it I speak hilariously slowly, so enjoy that. So to summarize, these projects are interactive adventures that erupt in the classroom, and that eruption is key. So it's a normal school day. There's no, today we're doing a project, today we're doing something a bit different. It's a normal day. In fact, I try and make it ultra normal and work with teachers to come up with the most boring lesson plan for that day in advance, which they present to their kids in the morning, and just experiment with, giving them a sense of doom. And for Arabian Nights, we came up with a 1970s educational video called A Detailed History of Concrete. And this was for about year 4 pupils in primary schools. And the teacher explained that today and for the next 6 weeks, they would only be studying the history of concrete. And a very droning voiceover listed for 30 seconds all the different shades of grey in which concrete came. And so this went on for about 2 minutes, and until the children's hope was drifting away. And then the screen pixelated, and you saw a glimpse then, and a genie's face appeared instead of the pictures of concrete, and said that his book was missing, and he began the quest and asked the children to help him find the original text of Arabian Nights, so beginning an adventure where initially they're emailing him because he was trapped in the internet, and he then sends them to the Birmingham Library, where he appears on the big screens because he's trapped in the internet, and ultimately leads them down to find a forgotten archive space beneath the Birmingham Library, where they found the original text of Arabian Nights. Unfortunately, it had been eaten by bookworm, so only half of the stories are there, so they needed to take that book back to their classrooms and then work with a facilitator to rewrite the Arabian Nights and free the genie from the internet. But that eruption's key because it allows the day to seem a bit transgressive, and it makes it feel like a diversion from the normal day, and it secretly makes it feel like it's not work, although it is. And the teachers' aims educationally are right at the heart of what we're doing. We start by saying, what do you want to learn? Do you want them to improve literacy, to improve story writing, deliver curriculum aims? And that's what we start with, and all of our storytelling and interactive theatre is nested beneath those aims, and we always check in with the teachers to go back to that. So there's a clear primacy in the objectives of what we're doing. And what unites all the pieces as well is that the children are cast as heroes. Characters make contact and they need help. And it just so happens that either the children have the skill set in story writing, or they're in the right place at the right time to be able to actually help this character. And as soon as this character, who's obviously an adult, asks for help, the back straighten and the focus shifts because there's context to what they're doing. And the fact that they happen to be ticking off curriculum targets while they're helping the genie is just a happy coincidence, because for them it's about the context of helping the character. So, adventures in learning and multilingual creativity, it's kind of at the start of its relationship. But one of the projects we've done is called A Cat Escapes, and this tells the story of Jasmine the kitten, who is being held prisoner, sort of, by well-meaning catnappers in a posh house in Kensington. And she only has newspapers and a computer terminal in the room, but she copies them and works out how to send emails out to the class. But they're quite badly spelt because the paws push down several keys at once. But they come through, and she's obsessed with the R key because she's a cat. And she asks for help. And so each week she sends them an update, a story about what's happened to her in that week, and gives them a challenge to solve. For example, there's a high window in the room which she can't see out of, but needs to if she's going to get out. And all she has is newspaper. So one week they need to design a tower or a staircase or a ladder which can hold a cat and which she can climb to see out of it. For them, it's helping Jasmine, but for the teacher, it's the Key Stage 2 bridge building and structures session. And the lesson plan that teachers use is almost identical to what they would do if they were teaching about bridges and triangulations being strong, but the context is bookended by Jasmine's story. And we were running this project in a school in Wandsworth, and we checked in with the teacher after a couple of weeks, and it was going well. But she mentioned that one boy who'd recently arrived from overseas, called Esteban, was enjoying the story but not engaging with the group exercises. And we chatted a bit more to her about Esteban and found out that he spoke fluent French and Spanish and was the only pupil in that class who did. And so the next time Jasmine sent an email, it said, "It's great that you're helping me escape, but when I do escape onto the streets of London, you know, London is a very metropolitan, it's a very multicultural city out there, so I need to learn to speak a range of different languages." And she sent them phrases to be translated into different languages, such as, "Where is the fish shop? How much is the fish? Can I have fish?" And the kids had to translate them. And of course, French and Spanish were two of the languages she wanted to be translated. So the teacher read the email. Now, does anyone speak French and Spanish? And Esteban was the only child in the class who did. So that week, his superpower was the hero. So he had a group around him. They were writing down what he said. He was the leader of a team that week. Other weeks, it was different pupils. But I think it meant that he was embedded in the show, and we didn't have to invent an expertise for him because, in fact, the show went to where his existing knowledge was. And I think that's one of the key elements of how Adventures in Learning work, and also how we might be able to expand that to a project which is more dedicated to exploring multilingual creativity. So yes, just a couple of the things which I think drive the work, or the tools underneath it. So it's casting pupils as experts. As we mentioned with Esteban, it goes one stage further, because rather than creating a fictional expert role for the pupils to step into, actually we try and build their real-life superpowers and their real-life talents and abilities into the story, so their heroism is based on skills they actually already have. And there's also a thing called plausible ignorance, which Sam Holmes invented that term in a research study into this work. And that's the idea that because the adventure comes in from outside, and because the teacher plays along and is surprised and never questions the reality of what's happening, they are not the expert. They are not saying, "I am teaching you this, I have this knowledge, it's coming down to you." In fact, anyone asking a question, all the questions are valid, and the teacher will ask questions, and so will pupils, and any idea is equally valid. There's a real equality in terms of knowledge in that space. And that, I think, empowers pupils because there's no way of being wrong, or everyone's making stabs in the dark at the start. And that creates a freer and slightly different space. And also it creates this transgressive space, which I think leads to bonds between the teacher and the pupils, because they sometimes pupils have to persuade their teacher to go along with helping the genie or helping the kitten trapped in the room. And eventually teachers go, "Okay, well, we were supposed to be studying the history of concrete, but we can actually help this character." But the teacher might then say, "But we can't let the head teacher know because, you know, we'll get in trouble, so let's keep it stum." And sometimes we've created sort of fake assemblies about about concrete, perhaps, to present to the school, so that the teacher can say, "You see, all we're doing is the concrete things you told us to do, Mr. Johnson." So this whole feeling of subterfuge, which hopefully makes the school day start to feel like an adventure. And the work with Esteban in particular has kind of seeded a couple of projects that we're keen to develop more. We've just started working with some partners in Sweden around exploring this work, and I'm interested in creating an English as a foreign language adventure further down the line, where you have a class overseas who are learning English, and they get contacted by a character based in England whose quest requires something to happen in Sweden or Italy or France, wherever they happen to be based. And so the class's own expertise, perhaps about their own country, and obviously knowledge, and the fact that they're geographically located there, means that they're able to step up and be the heroes. But also, they're having to translate the messages from the character and write back in the language. And it allows a responsiveness, which I think is key. So there's a human writer playing that character, and the teacher will have a back channel to say, "Oh, could you put in a few more complicated words?" Or they're supposed to be learning words about science, so could you do something about that in your message this week? And similarly, if they're being too challenging, they can simplify it. And it allows also, if someone has a really good week and someone has a magnificent time, they can be celebrated and the character can give them a thumbs up through the internet. The second idea I'm interested in building is a spy adventure where we would embed an actor in a school for a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, in the role of a teaching assistant or a lunchtime play assistant, and it would become known to the pupils that this person is a spy. And we won't know if they're a good or bad spy, and probably at the end they'll be a good spy to avoid any nightmares. But they won't know that at the start, and they'll be told to take it in turns to track this spy during lunchtime. So our actor will take these strange walks around the playground at lunchtime, and hopefully the pupils will be tracking them in incredibly subtle ways. And the character will drop missives, or they'll see perhaps the character making a dead letter drop under a flower pot or in a hole in the wall or something. They will obviously recover the document and find that it's been encoded by being put in a whole range of different languages. Perhaps every other sentence is in a different language, even every other word or every other phrase. And those languages that letter's encoded with would just happen to correspond with the languages spoken by the pupils in the class. So again, as with Esteban, but this time scaled up, every pupil would have their moment of going, oh, I can translate that one. And perhaps they'd have to then compose their own messages using that same code, again, using their own multilinguistic skills creatively. So yeah, we're at the start of taking this Adventures in Learning model that we've used for curriculum and creative outcomes to see if we can explore in this area.